financial planner. Follow us on YouTube.
Andy, welcome back to the Spotlight.
Well, thanks for having me, Dave, and I expect to continue to do these podcasts as usual, just from the slightly different angle from where I'm coming from where I was before.
Fantastic. And let's start off with cryptocurrency and gold. And I know you started this new business and you're really into cryptocurrency and you've been looking at it for a very long time. Why is the crypto market right now growing so quickly?
It's growing because it's the most, in my opinion, the most impactful technology since the internet itself, and from a monetary standpoint, the most impactful change since the discovery of gold thousands of years ago. To me, fiat currency, I guess you could say it was a major discovery and change, but it was a change for the worse because it enabled governments and let's call it the 1% to basically steal from the poor and destroy the economy in the process and create political regimes that were unfavorable to the masses. Whereas with cryptocurrency, for the first time, technology has been created, which is a true monetary weapon. It enables people to fight back. It enables people to actually get wealthy in the process of fighting back. But most importantly, it's going to shrink governments and it's going to bring us back to sound money, which I believe Bitcoin is already demonstrating characteristics of. At the same time, gold is going to sit off on the side and be what it's always been best, a store of value. It won't have to deal with the monetary wars that it's in the middle of right now, where the government spends all the time focusing on holding it down because they view it as the big competitor. They're going to start to view cryptocurrency as the competitor, principally Bitcoin. And that's why when you see in the same week, within days, Jamie Dimon viciously attacking with complete propaganda Bitcoin, and then 2 days later, the government of China essentially banning the trading of Bitcoin, you could see that governments clearly understand the threat. But unlike gold, they can't just create paper derivative markets and collude. This is a decentralized network, which is growing dramatically, and it's going to change the world. It's already changing the world.
Now, you mentioned Jamie Dimon, and he came out and he said, Bitcoin is a complete fraud. But we know that JP Morgan is actually purchasing Bitcoin and trading Bitcoin. Why, in your opinion, why are they that afraid of the crypto market? From all your research and everything that you're looking at, what makes it so scary to them that this is evolving, it's growing, and people are taking notice?
Well, just from a simple business standpoint, he himself said several years ago, he said that this is one of many things that's eating our lunch, because if people are not trading stocks, but instead trading cryptocurrencies, it's something that they're not in. But more importantly, in the case of JP Morgan, they're, for all intents and purposes, they've always been a government partner in maintaining the status quo, and they've been handily rewarded for it with bailouts and inside information and interest-free money and all kinds of things that have enabled it to be the thieving colossus that it is. So that's the major reason for it. But as for them buying it, I would bet anything that their executives and smart people have been buying for the same reason everyone else has. It's been going up. But, the fact that they are trading for clients, I wouldn't call that them buying. It's almost like people, now that I'm out of the precious metal business, I could say that people like Ted Butler who say that JP Morgan is buying for their account, it's ridiculous. They are trading for clients. Look, we never know that is all opaque. Who knows what it is. But to say that because their trading account has it in it means that they are acquiring it personally. It's two different things. So, but clearly, look, the traders are trading it and buying it because it's going up, but that's not what the threat to JP Morgan is. The threat is that they are so tied into the fiat currency system and all the spoils of inside information they get because of it that they are terrified that it will replace the fiat currency regime.
Now, I've asked this question to many other people, and I'm going to ask it to you. Do you think the central banking system, because they're now developing their own cryptocurrency? I think UBS and other banks are involved in this, and there's many other banks that are involved. Are they trying to control the crypto market? Do they want control of the crypto market?
Well, I think they'd love to have control. They like control of everything. The problem is that they can't have it. They can control their own currency. That's great, but they can't control Bitcoin, which is decentralized. And, most of the time when you see these announcements, again, the public has no idea what Bitcoin is, and they trust and believe everything that Washington and Wall Street tells them. and the mainstream media. So if they say they're creating a blockchain to compete with Bitcoin, well, that must be true. But the fact is, they're really just doing this, A, for face saving, just to act like they have a clue that this giant technology that's around, that they're somehow part of it. And B, they want to make you feel like that, yeah, we can compete with this. We just have to create our own. But the fact is, creating a cryptocurrency is no different than creating a database. No one wants it. And yes, they can say, the Indian government or the Russian government or our government could say everyone has to use Fed coin or Russia coin or China coin. How is that any different than what we have today? I mean, today they say you have to use dollars or rubles or yuan. And in fact, the only difference is that it's more of this cashless society thing we've been talking about, this danger where the government controls every transaction and watches everything you do. But they can't control Bitcoin. It's not competing with Bitcoin. It would really just be competing with the US dollar, which they can just eliminate at a whim if they wanted to. So no, they have absolutely no control of Bitcoin. And when you see the government of China ban it, and yet the price is still hanging high because the world doesn't care. The Chinese could buy it elsewhere, and more importantly, the 6 billion other people in the world. So, they're doing everything they can from using their money printing, market manipulation, and propaganda schemes to try to slow it down. But this is not gold. It's a lot harder to slow it down. A decentralized network where they can't even collude. It's not like they can have meetings with the ECB and with the Bank of Japan and say, what can we do? They can't do anything except try to create the impression of control.
The corporate media is out there, and they're continually telling us that Bitcoin is in a bubble. I mean, you hear it all the time. Oh, and people come out and say it's in a bubble. When you look at it, is Bitcoin in a bubble?
Well, I've said before many times, two of the biggest terms, misnomers that are thrown out there to throw shade on something, especially something that people don't understand, especially something that's gone up that you are not involved in and missed out on, is to say it's either a bubble or a Ponzi scheme. I mean, just throw it out there. Oh, it went up a lot. It's a bubble. And the fact is, it's just, bubble is a highly subjective term, of course. But if you want to compare, Bitcoin's market cap to the growth of its subscriber rating, I mean, this is why they buy tech stocks on Wall Street, because of its subscriber growth. I mean, nothing has grown faster. Not to mention the immutability of the blockchain and the technology upgrades. So, no, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I think a lot of the altcoins have been in a bubble because this kind of .com-like industry exploded out of nothing with absolutely no regulation or filters. And it's already starting to come down. But no, Bitcoin is as far from a bubble as anything I've seen. The stock market is the big bubble, trading at .com valuations in a Great Depression era. But, when the mainstream controls the narrative and rigs the markets, it's always a buy. And the other one is they just call it a Ponzi scheme, even though no one knows what a Ponzi scheme is. It's like Jamie Dimon. It's the same thing. Jamie Dimon calling Bitcoin a fraud. The problem is, if you have a fraud, you do have to have someone that actually commits the fraud, right? And Bitcoin is not owned by anyone or run by anyone. No one is generating revenues or profits from it. It's just a decentralized protocol that thousands, if not millions of people are participating in. So right there, it's that those myths are debunked. But again, right now, no one cares. They think that whatever the Fed says is good, whatever Trump says is good, or Hillary or whoever's in charge is good, so long as the rig markets are there and the nanny state is printing money and giving them benefits.
Now, I know with the fiat currency system, the Fed controls it. It's really a debt note, and we have to pay taxes on it. Now, Bitcoin, this is not issued by the central bank. It's decentralized, and they don't control it. And if, for example, if employers, start to pay people in Bitcoin, do people have to pay taxes on the cryptocurrency that they're earning?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the same kind of thing with gold. I mean, there are rules. Obviously, there's capital gains taxes, but they're much harder to enforce than, say, if you have a stock portfolio with a broker, because the broker actually has to report to the government all of your capital gains and losses. In the gold market, it's the honor system, and the same thing with the cryptocurrency market. And look, in the gold market, at least there's some kind of paper trail. In crypto, there are some places that have paper trails, but many places where there's none at all. So the government is just, that's a big reason why they're so scared of it, is because they're going to lose so many tax revenues. Because even if they heighten their regulations and heighten their investigation into them, it's just impossible to control it all and to watch it all. And that's one of the greatest things about Bitcoin, is that it shrinks governments, because it forces government revenues to go down, in which case they have two choices: either get smaller or hyperinflate to pay for it. And of course, we know what they're going to do. But either way, that's a vicious cycle that's only going to create more demand for people leaving the legacy system and moving into crypto and, of course, gold.
Now, why is it still, I mean, you're talking about crypto. We've been talking about crypto quite a bit. Is it still important to own gold or silver?
Well, absolutely. I've had a little change in my thinking about this. I'll go over this in a second. But I made CryptoGoldCentral.com about Bitcoin and gold because I believe in gold more strongly than ever, mostly because I think it's no longer going to be the catalyst that destroys the system, but simply a benefactor, as crypto ultimately overwhelms the fiat regime. And I think as a result, you're actually one day going to be able to see gold go up dramatically without there being a lot of attention to it. Like, right now, with the common knowledge has been, well, the system will crash, there'll be a big demand for gold, and governments will come in and ban it and confiscate it, kind of like what they're trying to do with Bitcoin right now. Whereas I think the future is more one where it becomes a crypto-centric world, and gold is just a storage of value asset that moves up with the growth of the economy, and of course has that giant kick when the cartel is either destroyed or most likely just disbanded out of disinterest. When it comes to silver, though, I have definitely changed my tune. I certainly think it's going to go higher, particularly when the cartel is no longer in existence. There's going to be a giant revaluation.
So I wanted to get into the economy right now, and I wanted to talk about what is happening in the economy. The Fed is out there talking about unwinding their balance sheet, and they're still talking about raising interest rates. And, we're at this point where their balance sheet is continually growing. I mean, it's very, very large. And is it possible for them to actually unwind this? Can they really do it? And is it really going to make any difference?
Look, with the Federal Reserve and all the central banks, it's all just a game of propaganda and rigging markets and pretend. It's pretend and extend. And, you have to go back to early 2013. I mean, coincidentally, right at the time that Obama had his big closed door meeting with all the too big to fail banks. And the next day you had the alternative currency destruction raids, in which gold fell 10% and silver fell like 25% for absolutely no reason. That's when the whole thing started, with Bernanke and his exit strategy, and we're going to taper and all this stuff. And that was in April 2013. So we're 4.5 years later, and the Fed balance sheet is still $4.5 trillion, and interest rates are still 1%. But, when you rig the markets and you rig some of the soft data, and you just keep telling everyone everything is great, the economy is great, it's just not true. But if you just keep saying it and rigging markets and saying it over and over again, I forgot who the Goebbels said, if you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe it. You can make people convinced that you actually are tightening when you're not. And so again, what they said yesterday is, yes, we're not raising rates, even though we've said many times that we're going to, but we're not doing it. And maybe we will in December, maybe we won't, who knows? And our long-term, we actually lowered our long-term expectation for interest rates while we're saying how bullish, hawkish we are. We're going to slightly reduce our balance sheet in the next few months, starting in October. So by the end of the year, we're going to take about $30 billion off of our $4.5 trillion balance sheet. And then sometime next year, we'll pick up the pace, assuming everything goes as planned. So, the media, of course, writes, look at this, they're doing this, which, of course, by the way, is horrible for bonds and stocks, right? I mean, if you looked at any kind of, they're saying we're going to sell bonds, let alone when the government is also going to be selling bonds because they're raising their debt limit or getting rid of it entirely. This is obviously a bad thing for stocks. It's definitely not good for the economy if they're raising rates. But, if you got the little propaganda meme going, look, they knock gold down after the commercials were shorting it for a few weeks and say, hey, look, everything's great. But of course, things are not great. And so are they going to actually do it? No. At best, they'll do what they've done with the rates. Here we are. They started raising rates in December 2015. So we're about to hit 2 years. And rates are still 1%. But they keep saying, hey, look, we're raising rates very slowly, but we're raising rates. So that's the most they'll do. And I think the economy is just much worse than it's been before. The hard data is at an 8-year low, and that's before Irma and Harvey's impact are seen in the next couple of months. So I can't see anything material going on in that front. Again, higher rates is what will kill everything.
Now, we've seen China, they've come out with this yuan futures contract that's backed by oil or backed by gold. And we see Venezuela, moving towards this. How is this going to impact the dollar?
Well, not singularly, it won't impact the dollar, but I mean, just look at how many of these announcements are coming out. I mean, they started a few years ago, but they're really accelerating. I saw yesterday Russia said no more U.S. dollar trade at our ports. And what used to be a one-off announcement is now becoming a tsunami of announcements. Everyone is angry at the United States for what they've done to them economically, particularly now that they have a president who's, really engaging in some dramatic, currency war and trade war type of rhetoric. And so people are just looking to get around it. The Federal Reserve has been exporting inflation for decades and destroying the global economy, and they just want out. And particularly major geopolitical enemies that we've created, like Russia and China, who have a lot of power to do this. So I think the movement out of, from dollar hegemony has been underway for a while, and it's accelerating. But the bigger movement is the movement, as I call it, the ultimate monetary death cross, as more and more people find cryptocurrency and realize it's a superior solution to fiat currency, and it's one that the governments can't control.
Now, can the United States wage a trade war with China? I mean, is this going to hurt us, or is it going to hurt them?
Well, it's going to hurt everybody. And, again, it's one of these things. I won't just say Trump, because all the presidents do it. They like to act tough, especially around, when there's elections in play. But I mean, we're the largest debtor and they're debtor, and they're the largest creditor. And they're the ones with all the manufacturing and the low cost of production. And we're the ones with the high cost. And so it makes no sense. I mean, it's kind of like, poking the hornet's nest or prodding the sleeping bear. I mean, there's nothing. The only benefit is to try to look tough to naive voters, because it'll kill us, and it certainly won't help them any, especially when they retaliate with their own forms of trade wars. I mean, look, S&P. You know what happened? Remember, S&P downgraded the U.S. From its AAA status back in 2011, and
right.
Government practically shut them down. I mean, they were going to put the guy in jail who ran it, and basically shut them down and don't you ever do that again. And no one has done it since, even though the U.S. national debt is now $7 trillion more than it was then. But S&P this morning downgraded China. And I mean, I wrote about that this morning in my private content, saying, wow, I mean, you talk about an act of diplomatic war, because China has its 19th National Congress coming up 4 weeks from now. I mean, that's their once in 5 year convention where Xi Jinping is trying to get reelected. And I mean, it's, they've ordered the markets to be basically on lockdown because it's such an important event. So to do that right in front, like, to shame them and create this instability, shows you that right now we'll do anything to destabilize who we consider our enemies, be they trade enemies or real enemies or just fabricate enemies like North Korea. So I think the movement out of fiat is powerful. The movement out of dollars is equally powerful.
Do you think the deep state, the cabal, some people call it the cabal, do you think they wanted globalism, they wanted this like one world government, they were trying to push the TPP, and we see China with the one belt, one road system making deals, and Russia's making deals with many of the countries, and everything that the United States has been doing for the past couple of years where they're having regime change in the Middle East, all that is really falling apart right now. Are they losing their grip on, controlling everything?
Well, I don't believe at all in these cabals. I believe in organized financial collusion. Certainly, the gold cartel, of which there's tons and tons of proof of it. That's what I've been speaking about for years. Anywhere there's proof, I'm all for it. But and part of the reason I left where I was, frankly, a big reason that I couldn't take the precious metal industry anymore is because there's just too many people talking about things without proof. And there's definitely collusive groups out there. And certainly the major governments of the world and the major oligarchs of the world have a lot of similar shared, goals. But the bigger issue is what can they play a part in? Yes, they can influence central banks. yes, they can buy governments, but no, they can't change the price of Bitcoin. And that's the beauty of it, because there's definitely very rich, powerful people out there that are using everything that they can do to maintain the status quo. But there are some things that you can't change. And this is a real game changer, the emergence of Bitcoin, because it doesn't matter how rich or powerful you are, there's nothing you can do. And, the last week when the Chinese said they're banning Bitcoin and it didn't really have much of an impact, shows you that we are in the midst of a historic game changer for the monetary system and ultimately for the 99% that have been suppressed and repressed for so many decades.
Do you still think that the economy is going to be run into the ground? Do you think it's still going to crash?
Yes. I mean, it's been crashing. I would say that's why it's so comical when the Fed is with their raising rates. They know very well that even their own hard data index is at an 8-year low. I mean, it's like, I don't even know where they come up with these, +2, +3% GDP numbers, because we can all see that industrial production, factory orders, durable goods orders, retail sales orders, these things are all negative month after month. So how can they come up with growth of 2.5% other than just making up statistical adjustments? And these things are only going to get worse. The debt is worse than ever. The delinquencies are rising. Now you have trade wars that are burgeoning. There's going to be more currency instability with these currency wars going on. So I just can't see the economy going anywhere but down until this debt is repudiated one way or the other, and until the fiat currencies cannot just be printed at will, because that's what keeps the Ponzi scheme going, and it's right near its end, in my opinion.
I mean, it seems like it's a very strange coincidence that the crypto market has evolved during the period where the entire system is full of debt, the economic system's not doing well, and countries are moving away from the dollar. And then, we had this birth of this crypto market come up and people started to get into it. I mean, first people laughed at it in the beginning and, they said, oh, this is nothing. It's never going to go anywhere. And now you look at it today, it's almost like the internet when people didn't know about it and it's continually growing. Do you think this is a coincidence that this just happened at this exact time?
Not at all. I mean, Bitcoin was created in 2009, right in the heart of the financial crisis, and it was created as a result of the financial crisis. That was what Satoshi Nakamoto, be it he, she, or they, obviously were interested in. I mean, they created it to mimic gold's monetary policy of deflation, deflationary supply growth, and they did it in response to the destruction of money that was caused, or I should say, that peaked at the time of the financial crisis. So no, I mean, there's definitely a direct correlation between the usage of Bitcoin and the destruction of fiat purchasing power and the increase in capital controls and the costs of doing business.
Since we talked about the economy crashing, cryptocurrency, gold, how should people prepare now? In your view and from your research, what should people do to prepare for what is coming?
Well, I mean, it's the same question as always, and all the things that I've thought in the past, I think more so now. I think the economy is in worse shape. I think the fiat regime is much further into its ultimate demise than ever before. But now we have this new threat to the financial system, which is, to me, the biggest threat, the biggest monetary weapon in history. I mean, gold doesn't hold a candle as far as the power that it holds to change governments. Gold will certainly play a role in the change, but it can't change, as we've learned for 40 years, it can't change it on its own. But Bitcoin can. And so I think that whereas I've always talked solely about precious metals, if you're just talking about financially speaking, I now believe, and again, this is not like I'm here recommending, I'm not a financial advisor, but I have a website called CryptoGoldCentral.com where I focus on Bitcoin and gold. And I made it very clear that Bitcoin and gold are, in my view, the two best ways to protect yourself.
Andy, thank you very much